Hello and welcome to this special edition of A Current Affair. Tonight we will bring to a close one of the biggest investigations in this program's history. 4 years ago we took the unorthodox step of naming former Hey Dad star Robert Hughes as the man accused of multiple counts of child sexual assault both on and off the set of the top-rating sitcom during the 1980s. We were heavily criticised at the time, but we took this action after one of his victims and castmates, Sarah Monahan, explosively revealed what she'd endured as a little girl. And she was soon joined by many other victims who'd suffered in silence for 20-odd years. Sarah was supported by fellow cast members who'd tried to protect her all those years ago and were howled down. Tonight, as you would know, Hughes is behind bars awaiting sentencing on 10 charges of child sexual abuse. And we are joined now by Sarah Monahan, her brave supporters, Simone Buchanan and Ben Oxenbould, and her fellow castmates, Julie McGregor and Chris Truswell. Thank you all for coming in. Sarah, I have to start with you because this whole thing started with you 4 years ago. Did you ever think this day would come?
Some days I didn't. It seemed it was going to drag on forever, but it's nice. It's finally here, so it's great.
What has this meant to you?
I guess I'm vindicated now. I'm not sure what was worse was back in the day when nobody kind of knew, or the 4 years since when I did go public and I spent all those years of people saying that I was just making it up for fame or money or something, and now it's been proven in a court of law that he's guilty, so that's good.
The jury made you wait an extra day.
They did. For
your verdict. They tossed your verdict around a little longer than everybody else's. What was that extra 24 hours like for you?
Honestly, I think at that point I was just so thrilled for the other girls that they had been able to get their verdicts in, because, I mean, really it wasn't about me the whole time anyway. It was about all of the other girls. And I had one small charge tacked on to the end of all of those. And he did some awful, terrible things to them. And I feel like I got away lightly, you know, with what he did to some of them. But I was just thrilled for them. And so either way, I mean, I can understand the jury took a long time with mine because it was so public and they had to make it, you know, they had to really, I guess, soul search on, go through all of that, but very happy.
How important has it been to you to see him convicted, to see him now face a penalty for what he did?
I think it's great. I mean, it proves that no matter how high you are in the food chain, that you're no longer able to get away with things. I mean, 20, 30 years ago, if you were a star, you'd get away with it. And now we're proving more and more, especially with, you know, all of the other celebrities right now, that they are no longer immune.
Ben, what does it mean for you personally?
To be perfectly honest, Tracy, I really thought I'd be happy, but I'm not. I'm kind of numb. I don't think any good has come out of this situation whatsoever. I'm happy that he's been found guilty, because that means that it's been acknowledged and we've been admonished or vindicated to some extent, because we had been criticised for going public with it. But also that the girls now can heal and move on. I think that's what the most important thing is, really.
I'm curious by why you feel numb and why you don't feel happy, because I know you're passionate about this.
I am, and I think I really was anticipating happiness. I was anticipating that it would be the end of something and we can put that to bed and we can move on. I can't explain my feeling today. I feel sad for the entire process. I look back on the show and I feel sad about the show. You know, that was my first foray into Australian television. And now, as I said, I had this expectation of going, great, this is finally, it's been recognised and he's going to be held accountable, and that's what needs to be done. I just can't find the happiness in it yet.
Simone, you were nodding your head when Ben said he felt numb. How do you feel?
I'm sad that this has happened. I'm just really sad the whole thing's happened, but I'm glad that the verdict came in and people are, you know, these girls are validated, and you know, that's so important.
Chris, what about you? How are you feeling today?
I don't know, it's all so surreal. Yeah, to work with someone for 7 years and then all of this happening now, yeah, it's really hasn't hit home yet, really.
Julie?
Yes, well, the whole thing's really been a horror story, and all the revelations that have come out have just been so shocking for me. I was so glad, first of all, that Sarah was so brave to do this. I just think she's wonderful for doing this, and she's allowed an awful lot of other people to get the justice they deserved. There's got to be justice. There's got to be justice, and thank God there is, but you know, it's been bad for everybody, and the man's life has been ruined.
When you talk about feeling sadness for Robert Hughes, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm interpreting that as you all feeling like he should have admitted to this and received help many years ago. I mean, am I interpreting that correctly?
I think you're dealing with something that should have been picked up a long time ago, and he maybe should have gotten help much earlier. And I have to say that it's the people around him at that time should have made some effort to help.
It's funny, every now and again my numbness does give way a little bit to anger, I must say. I'm still very angry about it.
Simone and Ben and Sarah, can we talk about the price that you have paid these past 4 years for speaking out? Sarah, let me ask you. I mean, you have been criticised, haven't you, for taking your story to the media first before taking it to the police?
I certainly didn't know when we did that first article and the first couple of interviews that it was going to be anything more than that. You know, I had the intention of one interview just to say, not even naming Robert, just to say, this is what happens in the industry, be careful when you put your kids in it. And I mean, it snowballed out of control, and it was out of my hands. And so because it was out of my hands at that point, it was very insulting to me that everybody said I was doing it for money.
Were you expecting that many other girls to come forward?
No. I mean, we'd all heard rumours, but no, I had no idea that there would be that many. So, amazing.
And when you heard what he had done with the other girls, what did you think about that?
I was really glad I came forward.
Ben, what about you? Let's talk about the price that you have paid for speaking up, because you spoke very passionately to us 4 years ago because you were angry about some of the lies that we were being told around Sarah's story. What price have you paid for that?
It's changed my life entirely. There's no beating around the bush. As it came at 4 years ago, after we spoke, I copped a lot of criticism from people, particularly people within the industry, saying, "You idiot, you'll never work again, you've just buried your career," that sort of thing. And I would go home each night, and I spoke to my dad about it a couple of times before he passed away, and I said, "Dad, I'm confused. You know, I'm really confused about this, because I would think that I'm doing what may be deemed as the right thing to do, or the honourable thing to do. To stick by the girls, certainly to stick by Sarah, and to tell the truth about what I have seen. To the detriment of my career, perhaps, but Dad said, "Of course you're doing the right thing, mate. That's how we raised you. That's what this is about." I mean, I've had people come up to me and say, "Hey, Dad was my favourite show. How could you do that?" And I'd sort of say to them, I'd try and dismiss a lot of people because it just wasn't worth getting into it. I had one fellow who was very, very aggressive, bailed me up, got quite physical with me, you know, and sort of said, why would you do that? Why would you do that to someone? And the thing I asked him, I said to him, "Mate, have you got kids?" He said, "Yeah, I've got 2 daughters." And I said, "Who would you rather have living next door?" And he thought about it, and I think he thought at that point, "Oh, wow, maybe this guy is telling the truth." And that was the thing that really stuck in my side, was that people had thought that I was lying about this. How have we become a society where that would be something that you would do? You know, just bizarre, and certainly never something that I would do. This is not the way that I've been raised. I still do the odd acting job, but I've also had executive producers of shows come up to me and say, "Benny, we really wanted you for that role, but mate..." And I sort of think to myself, "But mate, what? What? I'm not the bad guy here, sorry. I'm not the bad guy here, you know. I don't understand why we would be being criticised. I don't understand." But now that this verdict has come down, I'll be very interested to see how people react and respond. Because people have, my friends that I considered my friends over the last 20, 30 years in the industry, turned their backs on me. And I'll be very interested to see how they respond. I don't really care, but I'll just be very interested to see their response.
How has that affected you?
It's very upsetting, and the fact that it's affected my career, very upsetting.
Simone, what's been your experience?
You know, unfortunately, the backlash has been, I've had all sorts of criticism for doing that. Some of it just from public, you know, writing to me saying you should be the one that goes to jail.
Why? 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 have they
Because
got
I didn't
that?
take it to the police when I was 18 years old, at the time. What I did do was take it to the highest person possible, which was the producer. I thought I had done the right thing by handing it over, and I thought he would take it from there. It's just the same what Ben was saying. It's just upsetting that we end up being criticised for it. But
Have you had people in the industry come to you and say that you should never have spoken out about Robert Hughes? Is that what you're saying? That
yeah.
is that because they believed he was innocent, or just that you shouldn't have talked?
This is this whole culture of shut up. You know, it's like if you're going to be that forthright, you're going to miss out on work. You can't be talking about child sex offences. You know, it's ridiculous. And also, I happen to know for a fact that I've missed out on a lot of work. I've heard that I've come close to getting roles, and the decision has been, well, no, she's tainted.
What do you read into that? Is that because Hughes' partner, Robin Gardner, is incredibly powerful in the industry as an agent?
I think that's what some people are saying, is that there was that connection there. And this was an extraordinary case. It was a very public case, you know, and everyone knew who Robert was, of course. But then you've got Robin Gardner, who's a very well-respected agent. And I think there's that's where a lot of that was coming from. People saying, oh, really, do you really want to go there? Do you really want to sort of push that? Thinking, but it's not about that.
You see, what you tell me now about the level of criticism and ostracism that you have suffered in the past 4 years horrifies me, because I don't see that. I see that as enabling of people like Hughes, and I don't see that as any less than the response you got all of those years ago when you tried to protect Sarah.
And the twisted irony of it all is that we are in that industry, and quite often Robert used that position to abuse people. He exploited their trust, and he abused his position. He was very cunning and very manipulative. I observed him very, very closely, and he was all of those things. He used his level of intelligence, his affability, his charm, all of those things. He just twisted it and used it in the most negative way. Absolutely unbelievable. And here we are in this industry where, you know, that occurred and was allowed to happen, yet we are being slightly ostracised for it.
And I feel really terrible for Ben and Simone for putting them through this for the last 4 years. But
You didn't put us through it, mate.
No,
Don't say that.
It's not you.
You didn't put us through it.
You've got some pretty heroic mates, I reckon.
I do.
Well, I mean, full kudos to Sarah for... Sarah opened the door, really. I mean, I'd had experiences throughout the last 20 years before this happened of people coming up to me on the street, girls coming up to me on the street and telling me their story, these horrific, terrible stories. And as soon as Sarah opened that door, I think that it gave a lot of women the courage to be able to go, do you know what? It's time to actually act now. It's time to do something now. We need to process this, resolve it, heal and mend and move on with our lives. So, you know.
Julie, I've been watching you, and you seem pretty emotional about this conversation.
Oh well, it is a difficult thing, and you know, I mean, it's awful to think that we had such a great time, all of us, you know, working together, and that this foul thing could have happened to sully it. And but the shock that I had when they posted a guard years later with, you know, because they had children on the set, the enormity of it suddenly hit me, and I thought, dear God, not children, surely, not children.
Now, that was after Sarah had left.
Sarah, yes.
Nothing was done for you, Sarah, was it? Nothing was done to protect you by people who were in a position to have done something for you.
Right. We had conversations about me not sitting on his lap anymore, and it was offered that I could get out of my contract and leave the show if I was uncomfortable, and that was pretty much it.
I need to talk now to Ben and Simone about what we discussed 4 years ago, and I think it's important to remind our viewers of what you two tried to do all those years ago to protect Sarah. both of you went to the executive producer of the program, Gary Riley. And Ben, just remind us of what the response you got from him was.
He was so aggressive. He was so aggressive. And one of the other writers, also very, very aggressive, physically intimidating. This was supposedly some, you know, rite of passage for me or something. He said to me, "You don't say a word about this." He threatened me. And the last thing he said to me was he shook his beetroot red face in his hand, you know, in my face, saying, "You consider this a lesson in professionalism." That was me. That was my foray into the Australian television industry. My lesson in professionalism was shut up about the pedophile, basically. That's what it was.
Because he's the star of the show.
Because he's the star of the show.
And he's the golden goose.
Yeah, and the other twisted irony that's just come out recently about the part of his defence was, well, he was as popular as the Prime Minister of Australia at the time. We are talking about somebody who is consistently doing something that is so below the law it's not funny. And he has to be held accountable. And I even said that to Gary at the time. I said, where do you draw the line, mate? Because my line's over here, yours is way over here. I don't want to be a part of the show if that's the case. I didn't tell you this last time. I tried to break my contract. I pulled my pants down and chucked a brown eye at the audience one night. I shaved my head. I did everything I could to get out of my contract. They turned around and gave me a $44 a week pay rise, I think, was how they dealt with it.
Generous.
Yeah. Hush money, I believe that's called. Yeah.
Simon, you got the same response when you took your story about what was happening to Sarah to Gary Riley, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, you know, and I went to Gary after Sarah told me about the flashing incident, so that's when I went to Gary and said, listen, this stuff that's going on, it's gotten worse, and this is what's happened. And he said, OK, we'll just leave it with me, but don't say anything to anyone about this. Leave it with me. So they were the words that he used, and I thought, as an 18-year-old girl, I thought, I've taken it as high as I can. It's not my job to take it to the police. And I thought that he would handle it from there, but nothing happened.
It's staggering, and I wonder how many other young girls would tell the same story, not about Robert Hughes necessarily, but about, you know, their own molesters, their own, you know, perpetrators.
Well, you see girls who have it happen within a family, and they still have to go to Christmas or Easter or any kind of function, and they're expected to pretend that it doesn't happen because the family doesn't want to talk about it. I mean, at least I never have to see him again, but I couldn't imagine what it would be like, you know, with a family member.
I can't imagine what it would be like to be, as a family member, to have somebody come home and say, do you know that one of your family members has been molesting children? What do you do? Really? And I think it's a legitimate question. What do you do? Do you just immediately, these are the people you love, they're your family. Do you immediately turn on them and go, oh, you're out, we'll have you outed, thanks mate, we'll sort you out? Do you do that? You know, what's Robin's position? Does she stand by him through this? Clearly she has. Is it through love? Is it through denial? Who knows? You know, it's a very, there's no textbook, you know, there's no rules and regulations as far as this stuff goes. Absolutely none.
Obviously, it's not just in this industry. It's across the board. It's happening everywhere. But yeah, I mean, and I lost someone very close to me through. He never did come to terms with what happened to him as a child, and I've been surrounded by people who are severely scarred and who have never spoken up, and really it's made me sick to my stomach. I started working as an 8-year-old. I was a child actor. And back then, you know, I saw and heard stuff that really I shouldn't have and couldn't do anything about because I was so young. But there's stuff that went down that was not good.
When you look at how difficult it has been to bring these charges to fruition and what you've all had to go through, you know, can you understand the disincentive there is for people to speak?
Yes. And the court process is brutal. I mean, I get that he has a right to a fair trial. I get that his lawyer has to be mean. But some of the stuff, I mean, they were just, I mean, they're awful. And I had the most time on the stand out of all of the girls, I guess because he really disliked me the most because I was the one who made it public. And so they made a point of trying to break me. So, but yeah, I mean, it's not pretty.
Sarah, there's a question I wanted to ask you 4 years ago and I left it alone because you didn't want to go there then. What did you say to your mother when this was happening to you all those years ago?
I don't really remember. I mean, I know that she kind of knew what was going on, and she told my brother that she knew about the flashing, but she didn't know about anything else. She just kind of didn't want to know. And I haven't spoken to her since, so I've never asked her.
You haven't spoken to her since when?
Since I went public.
Did she not agree with your decision to go public?
No, apparently she was very upset.
Why is that?
I don't know. My brother's been fabulous through this whole thing, and we've stayed really close, but I try not to push that by asking him too many questions. So I've decided that it's her problem these days. I'm just going to move on and get along with my life, and if she ever chooses to call me, then so be it, and if she doesn't, then that's on her.
That has to be damaging, I would have thought, for you to not have a relationship with your mother.
Yeah, especially since I don't have a dad. So it's very painful. Thankfully, my mother-in-law is the most wonderful woman on earth, and she makes up for her tenfold. So I've just shifted my love, really.
People who are subjected to sexual abuse as children, the ones who talk about it usually talk about carrying some damage. Do you carry damage as a result of what was done to you?
I'm sure I do. I think other people see it more than I do, just because it's part of me and I don't see it. Matt talks about things like I can't hold down a job for more than 6 months because obviously I have a problem with the chain of command, which isn't awesome in the military, because you're supposed to go up the chain of command. And so we had an incident in the office where there was actually a sexual harassment thing, and we had let the chain of command know, and they didn't do anything. And so I just circumvented and went around it because I've learned that works. And so it got taken care of very promptly after that. But I mean, I'm sure that there's other things that people think are very odd or strange about me, but thankfully I don't see them in a mirror, so I just ignore them for the most part. So.
Ben told us 4 years ago that you were a tough little nut when you were a kid. Do you have a tough exterior? Do you think?
Yeah, I think people sometimes think I'm a bit of an ice queen, just because I'm not very affectionate. I don't. That was the biggest thing about moving to the States is everybody's very huggy, and I'm not a hugger. And I've learnt over the last 10 years to be affectionate and to show my love. But it's been a very deep learning process to allow people in. And I never used to be able to have like girl friends, and now I've learnt to have friends and trust people.
Ben, I understand that you turned up to the court on the day of the final verdict. Why did you do that?
Do you know, I was in town, I was only 3 streets away. It had occurred to me to go down at some point, and just, all this has played out in front of us in the media. We've been silent for so long, we haven't been able to communicate with each other. And I'm one of those kids who, you know, when somebody said, don't touch it because it's hot, I wouldn't walk away and go, okay. I'd go, ow, that is hot. I like to see and feel things. I like to know that it's tangible, perhaps. I wanted to see it. I just wanted to make sure that it was real, that it was happening, that this wasn't some kind of crazy dream I was having or something. I just wanted to make sure that it was real. And the fact that it has come to this point now, for me, I guess it was just, it was nothing like an up yours or anything like that. It was purely, I just wanted to sit there in that context and know that this was happening, that he is being held accountable. And a small part of me wanted to see him suffer, and I'll be perfectly honest about that, and wanted to see the people who'd stood by him who knew, I wanted to see them suffer. I wanted to see that in their eyes, I wanted to see that they were suffering, that they were going through this, that they were feeling this. Like all the girls felt it, like Sarah felt it, like we've all felt it. I want to know that they're feeling it as well. And it's not an eye for an eye thing. It's acknowledgement that this has occurred and that the right thing has come out of it. I wanted to see it. I just wanted to see it.
And when you saw it, how did you feel?
I felt good, Tracy. I won't deny it, I felt good. I wasn't doing a jig in the street, but I felt good.
This is a tough question. If this happened to your child, would you put them through the court process?
I'd probably end up in jail myself. I would kill. Look, yes, I would. Yes, I would, because what if you don't, and that person comes back? You know, as a mother, my instinct would be, right, let's try and fix this. I think that's what my gut's saying. Yes, I would.
What about you, Ben?
You're right, Tracy. That is a very tough question. I think I would, but I also think that my first instinct would be to find the person and skin them. Really, as a parent, really.
Yeah.
It's funny how you do go back to your kind of primal instincts in these situations. I know the night that I caught Robert molesting the girl a guest who was on the show, she was 8 years old. 3 minutes after that happened, I was trying to pull the door off his dressing room to have words with him. But I think that I think I would. I think I would have to really sit down and breathe very deeply in order to not allow myself to get into a situation where I would go and punish that person myself. But I think, yes, I would. I do think I would go through the court process, as Simone said. I think that it's really important that these people are held accountable and taken out of the system, given help or whatever needs to be done, but certainly taken out of the system. And I think that I think I would have, yes.
We'll be back with more of this conversation with the cast of the former hit sitcom Hey Dad right after this break. Welcome back to this special edition of A Current Affair, and we are speaking tonight with the cast of the former hit sitcom Hey Dad. What's the message that comes out of this, do you think? How can this be used to empower those people not to be silent, do you think?
Look, I think personally that you get results.
Yeah.
You get results. You know, there is a resolve now. I really hope that all of Robert's victims are able to now go, do you know what? He has been held accountable. It's been acknowledged what has happened to me. I can now move on with my life.
Some children are blessed with wonderful parents, supportive parents who would give the right advice. Some children don't have that kind of support. So I would say if you could bear going through the process, speak up, especially if the offender's out there continuing doing what he's doing. And if speaking out is going to stop this person, then do it. Make sure the child is protected around people that they trust, that loves them, and get through it somehow and come out the other side. They probably maybe need to go through some therapy afterwards or something, but it's worth it. We need to start speaking up for our kids.
Do you believe that it is safer for children? Perhaps this is a question for all of you. Do you believe it's safer for children in your industry now than it was when Sarah was a child?
I think these days it's very different. I think back then there was a lot more cover up, but it was just a looser situation. I think now, with the different legislations that are coming in and the different the awareness that there is on the subject, it's a little harder to get away with stuff that it used to be. So I'm hoping that will continue to change and continue to get better. But one of the ways that can happen is just through awareness, and I think it's our responsibility as adults, and it's not even if you're a parent yourself. It's our responsibility as a community to look after the children, and just for all of us to be watching out. And I think it's getting better, but it takes something like this, people speaking up.
Julie?
This is a test case, isn't it? And there are the other cases in the UK. So I think before anyone embarks on any other kind of journey like Robert Hughes, they'd have to be aware that they might not get away with it as they thought they were going to.
We're nearly done here. There are a couple of things I'd like to raise with you all. Number one, we've talked about how difficult it is really to get these sorts of charges up, 20, 30 years after the event. What would you like to say to the police who took up your case and the prosecutors who've brought this to a conclusion?
Those guys are great. And I couldn't imagine doing the job that they do, having to hear those stories day in, day out. And I mean, you can just see the little wrinkles on their face and what goes on behind their eyes, and just the stories that they must think about every night when they go home to their families. I'm very grateful that they're there to do their job.
Simone?
Yeah, I think this team have been particularly unwavering. You know, from day one they've been really supportive of all of us, but really determined to get the job done, and they've been brilliant.
Have you ever regretted talking?
No, not at all. No, and I'd do it again.
Ben, ever regretted talking?
No way.
Final question to you, Sarah. Is this the end of court cases for you, or are you going to pursue some sort of civil action now?
No, I think this is it. I think I was burnt out on that. It would be nice if Channel 7 stood up and said, obviously we did the wrong thing. And I understand that it's new management, it's all different people. But it would be great if they said, we're going to make sure that this never ever happens again, and they make sure that there's always a chaperone on set, and make sure that no other kid goes through what I had to go through. But I don't want to deal with court anymore.
Can't blame you for that.
And it was never about the money. That's the other thing. You know, everyone thought I was doing it for money, and it wasn't about the money. It was always about just getting justice. But it's not going to take away that pain inside. So I don't see the point of putting myself through that again.
Does this take away the pain inside, the verdict?
Just a tiny bit, yeah. I'm sure over the next couple of days it'll feel better. But just, I think, I feel that group for all 5 girls. So it's a little bit, yeah, it's pretty good.
Does it matter to you what sentence he receives?
I definitely like him to do some jail time. But that's not up to me. I hope that they're not lenient. It seems judges in this country can be very lenient. And you see a lot of them that get away with a slap on the wrist, and then they come out like the Daniel Morecambe killer, you know, who just keep progressing. So I hope that I hope that he gets a sentencing that's worthy of what he put all those girls through.
We're going to ask our cast to stay with us for another few minutes, and we'll be back with more of this special edition of A Current Affair right after the break. Welcome back to this special edition of A Current Affair as we continue our conversation in the wake of the conviction of Robert Hughes on child sexual assault charges. You've all been very brave. It's taken a long, long time. I hope you get a measure of comfort and release and healing out of this. Thank you so much.
Well, and
Thank you,
Tracy.
Tracy.
Thank you.
And Ben, I want to thank Ben and Pete Stefanovic. I mean, you guys have all been like through this whole thing, holding my hand, and like it's strange the people in the media who've been very loving. But you guys, I mean, without you, none of this would have happened. So thank you.
And it took you, Sarah, to get the ball rolling.
That's
so
it.
It certainly did.
You're the hero here too.
It certainly did.
I'm not a hero. I just did the right thing.
I think you all did the right thing, but you certainly stood up, and you know, we've all copped our share of criticism through this process, but I think that we should all hold our heads up tonight. So
Thanks, Tracy.
Here's to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching. I know that this has been a very intense experience for anyone who's watched this. It's been incredibly intense for all of us who've been involved for the past 4 years. That brings to an end this special edition of A Current Affair. We'll be back with a whole new show tomorrow night. Good night.